Turn it up. It's The Record Machine with your host, Jimi Hall.
Well, now you can travel around every nation, and at the start of every conversation, two questions are always the same. Where you're from and what's your name? Well, there's a thing that I like to say when I'm feeling in the mood to play. Now when they ask me where I'm from, I just say Earth. Hey, hey, where you come from? I come from Earth. Hey, hey, where you come from? I come from Earth. I come from Earth. Well, now you can travel through outer space, or California, or any old place. Two questions are always the same. Where you from and what's your name? What's your name? What's your name? Well, there's a thing you might like to say if you're feeling in the mood to play. Now when they ask where you come from, you could just say Earth. Hey, hey, where you come from? I come from Earth. Hey, hey, where you come from? I come from Earth. I come from Earth. Well, most people just laugh, but that's not always the case. Like a time a girl asked me, true story, she said, where is that place? Well, now you can travel through outer space, or California, or any old place. Now when they ask where you come from, you could just say Earth. Hey, hey, where you come from? I come from Earth. Hey, hey, where you come from? I come from Earth. I come from. Talk to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the band Harmony Dreamers, singer-songwriter Byron Lee Scott to the program. How you doing, Byron?
It's my pleasure to be here, Jim, and I've been listening to the Record Machine show, and I like your shows, and it's an honor to be with you.
Awesome, man. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood here in North Myrtle Beach. Where are you calling from?
North Myrtle Beach. I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
Do you prefer Jim or James?
Either or is fine.
Okay. All right, cool. Hey, are you a musician? I don't know your background. I was just curious.
No, I'm not a musician. Disc jockey.
An avid music lover.
Excuse me?
You're an avid music lover, apparently, then.
Oh, yes, sir. I've been DJing music for years and collect albums and 8-track tapes and compact discs and 45s. You name it, I have it.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Wow. Cool, man. That is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I just started listening to your show and really enjoyed what I heard. And congratulations, man. It's just an awesome thing you're doing there, man. I'm amazed at the music industry now, the online things that are happening with music. It's just amazing and wonderful to me, you know?
Yeah, I came across your music through Michael Stover. MTS Records and
Yes.
Management. He had sent me an email with the press release for the debut album, and I checked it out. I was like, wow, this guy's pretty cool. I got to ask him to come on the show.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, I ran into Michael like at the last minute, and man, I really like that guy a lot. He knows people, and so he just made my load a lot easier of trying to contact influencers like yourself. And yeah, well, I appreciate your words about that, man. I just love writing songs, and this is my first album release after years and years and hundreds of songs.
Can you tell me about your musical background? When did you get started in music?
Yeah, so my background you were asking about. Well, my influences, when I was young, I was influenced by lyrics a lot. The Beatles and songs from that era about peace, love, brotherhood, hope, and just have fun and humorous songs. I really liked, people like Joe Walsh, Reed that could throw in humor sometimes. And even when I was a kid, funny songs like Guitar Zan and I can't remember, some of the funny songs. And so I try to have humor once in a while. It's hard to write humor. But then I was influenced also by I learned music by ear from the time I was about 4 or 5 years old, guitar and a little bit of piano and drums and things. And then I took some lessons, but then I just started memorizing and performing songs. And over the years, thousands of cover songs I've memorized and sang and played guitar and switched on drums sometimes. And I learned music by noticing, chord patterns and things that were similar. And then certain people, like my favorite musician, Jan Hammer, a keyboard player that was, some people might know him from the Miami Vice theme, the original Miami Vice, but he's been on dozens of albums with Jeff Beck and so forth. And he kind of expanded my knowledge of chord structure just by studying his songs. And a lot of people like that, other influences were, there's so many, like yourself. I mean, I go way back to listening to music from the 60s and even some 50s or older, I suppose, and 70s, 80s, and on through. And all of those people influenced me, really. But then there was, Jeff Beck, Jan Hammer, Tommy Bolin, Van Halen. Those were some people that influenced me when I was younger. ZZ Top, my songwriting was influenced by people like that. And after learning all those songs, I had been writing songs since I was young, and I just kept writing, and I set a goal of 15 originals, and I raised it to 30, then 50, then 70, then I quit counting the recorded originals on my 4-track at that point. And this was before the internet. So then just recently, that brings me up to now, I just decided to study the music business and the internet music business and release music on the internet for the first time.
Now, your bio says you play multiple instruments. Which ones do you play, and when did you start playing them?
Well, guitar, I got my first guitar when I was 4 years old and played piano by ear back then. But guitar and rhythm guitar, actually, and lead vocals was what I did when I was younger in bands, because I played with a great lead player back then, and I just let him play lead. And eventually I learned lead guitar. And then, really, I think Jan Hammer was such an influence on making me go to guitar synthesizer. And back in 99, I had guitar synthesizers, but the drummer, that brings me to Larry Dragland, who is the other main member of this project, really. We were bandmates back from 99 in a band called the Hi-Fi Hippies in Seattle. Wow. It was a trio, and that's where I started playing guitar synthesizer. So guitar synth and guitar are really the main things, and then I've always switched on drums. Larry plays guitar as well, so we'd switch on a few songs. And that reminds me, Jim, throughout, when I was young, in all these cover bands throughout the years, the ones that played originals never stuck together long enough to do anything in my world. And so that made me start recording by myself with a drum machine, a bass, a keyboard, guitar, a microphone, and a 4-track. Because I was really forced to, and it carried on through that until, and even when I was doing these songs during COVID, as happened with a lot of musicians, I was locked down and I was learning my recording equipment again, and I was doing all the tracks myself. And then last summer, the drummer, Larry Dragland, and I went to his place to pet sit and house sit while they were on vacation. I stayed the whole summer and we did drum tracks. And that was the beginning of our sound, which is 2 or more drummers or percussion on pretty much every song. Lots of drums and percussion. And so that summer was really the beginning of it. And some of the songs were coming together then. And before that, I was doing it all by myself, right? And a lot of the now this brings me to really, I want to point to the other people in the album as well, because your question was about what instruments I play. And so I really play all the instruments. And, when people classify music, they say, well, what genre are you? And that's not always an easy thing to pinpoint. We call it synth pop and then sometimes psychedelic rock, or it might even be a little progressive rock now and then. But basically, Jim, most of our music that we love is bass, drums, guitar, synthesizer, vocals, right? And so whatever you want to call it, but the other musicians really added so much. So Larry's drum tracks, I mean, the dual drummers and everything. And there's a song, No Stopping, on there. It's a progressive song. And we have dueling drum solos in the middle. Between my electronics and his real drums. And I told him to cut loose on that song. And man, Larry can play. I mean, you'll hear that on the album. The real drums that you hear, I'm doing a lot of the electronic drums and percussion. And we have a percussion player also, Marta. I might as well mention her. Marta Rosatia, she's from Spain. And she's a professor a real professor of percussion, and has done many things. And she's on a couple of tracks. So the drums was the beginning. And then funny thing happened, Jim. Larry, we were recording in his studio in Colorado that summer. And we were doing the song Sophie and Pearl, a song about 2 kittens. It's a real life story that I wrote about 20 years ago. Fun song. And he just mentioned offhand, he said, well, all it is now is a real bass guitar. And it got me thinking, because I had synth bass on almost everything, and this was the beginning of bass players, man. I tell you, the bass players on this album are off the charts. And I love bass guitar now, because the first thing I did, I hired for the song, the title track, I Come From Earth, that we're listening to today, was I hired a guy that I found online named Nikita Astrakhanantsev from Ukraine.
Wow.
And he's a progressive, and he plays upright, fretless, 5-string, orchestra, symphonies, jazz rock. And I heard him play, and I said, yeah, let's, and he was actually a session musician, and you wouldn't believe he wanted like $15 to do a track or something. I said, no. Wow. I paid him much more than that. He just loves bass, and he's on the internet. And we've got information about everybody. So he was the first track. And I just heard the difference between the synth and his bass. And I went, oh my God, this is my weakest area probably. Although I play bass on 2 tunes on the album, and it's a fretless, a jazz bass with a pick. And I can play bass well, but these guys, so then that led me to, and he does 2 songs. He plays fretless on another tune, and then he plays a 5-string on I Come From Earth. So then another bass player, Sierra Moser from Austria, she is on 3 tunes. And man, she was blind since birth, and she started on violin and then fell in love with bass. And long story short, she got 2 scholarships to Berkeley and has studied under all these people I've never heard of. Wow. And when I sent her the tracks, as a producer, I learned this long distance producing really works well for me at times, and I'm good at instructions and in charts and everything. And she said, I don't want a chart. Just send me the song. I will know what to play. And I'm telling you, her bass, unbelievable. So then there's another guy named David Awa. He's from Nigeria. He was in UK most of his life till his father died. Now he's back in Nigeria. But he can funk, and this one song needed some funky bass. So it was a last minute thing. He dropped in. And then the fourth bass player, Robbie Malone, who is with David Gray for 20 years. I don't know if you know who David Gray is.
Yep, I know who that is.
Okay, so he was recommended those. This brings me to drummers, and I'm almost through these other people that made such a difference in the album, man. I mean, so after Larry is on 80% of the tracks on drums, and then after we finished that summer, there was a few tracks, and his drums weren't set up for the same sound and everything, and he said, and I had some electronic tracks, and he said, no, man, hire a drummer, please, this is not that. And so I found this guy, Graham Hopkins, who every drummer knows who he is, but he was with Snow Patrol, and he's been on 46 albums that I know of. Mm-hmm. But how I knew Graham Hopkins, I couldn't believe when I ran into him, was that Glenn Hansard and Markita Irglova were in a movie called Once, and it's a music movie. Have you ever seen that?
No, I haven't.
Oh man, you got to see this movie. It's called Once.
Okay.
And it's a music movie. It's the music of Glenn Hansard, and Markita Irglova plays keyboards, and it's a music movie. But my favorite scene in the movie with Graham Hopkins when he was young, a drummer, was it's so inspirational, man. They go into the studio for a weekend, and they record a whole album in the weekend. But the very first scene, the dude in the control booth, he's kind of bored, and he talks to somebody in the cell phone. He's like, yeah, I got to record these dorks. And they start playing this song with acoustic and him singing. And when the drums and the bass come in, mm-hmm. and that's Graham, that dude woke up in the sound booth. He was like, whoa. And he started mixing. And then the whole weekend was just this recording of all these songs and these situations. And then they went out to the beach and listened to it in the car at the end. And they, these guys actually they met on the street in the movie. And then they met these street musicians, which one of them was Graham Hopkins. And they said, you want to record an album this weekend? They said, yeah, sure. Let's practice the songs. Okay, boom. And they had an album in a weekend, man.
Wow.
And that always inspired me. Like, after recording on my own for so long, and you do the drum track, then the guitar, then the bass, then the keys, then the vocals, then the backup vocals, then the this, the that, and just to go in a studio with some dudes like that and just go boom, done in a weekend. Oh man, I dream of that. But working with these people, so Graham, I ran into him, and he went on tour with Glenn Hansard. I mean, he's played at Royal Albert Hall, I don't know where, everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so Graham's on 2 tracks, and then he said on this song, Summertime Memory, he said, you should get Robbie Malone to play bass, which is his buddy. They're both from Ireland. And Robbie was out on tour with David Gray, and then I spoke with him. He said, yeah, man, send me the track. And wow. I mean, his bass is like the Beatles' bass on that song, Summertime Memory. So him and Graham, they've been playing together for years, and when they're in Ireland now, they play with the Square Pegs, and I don't know who in Dublin, all these people coming through. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we've got Graham on the drums, mm-hmm. and now we're almost through it. Well, I didn't mention, when I first started searching for people, mm-hmm. it was actually female vocalists that I was looking at their demos and things online, and I went through maybe like 20 of them.
Right.
And there are 8 on the album. Mm. And then so there are 8 of them, and one of them, like Anna, she's on 5 songs. She's from Russia, Anna V, and she's amazing. You'll hear her on the second selection, which is Spinning Around the Sun, part 1 and 2 tied together as on the album. They're 2 separate pieces, but they're tied together on the album. Mm-hmm. So Anna sings on those. And then the 8 vocalists, I actually found more than 8, but I was trying to match them up with songs. So that was really part of the reason why I started searching. But these other musicians, the drummer, the bass was a big one. Mm-hmm. And then to round it off, there was on the song Sophie and Pearl about the 2 kittens. I always pictured a clarinet on that song. And I researched and I found this guy, Ian Smith, in London, and he's played with everybody, the symphony and on BBC shows. And, he was on tour in the 80s, I think, with like some funk and disco bands. I don't want to misname them, but when they toured in Europe, the guys he plays sax, clarinet, and flute, but I wanted clarinet, and I heard his demos, and I went, oh my God, this guy. And, it's funny. I really learned to work with some of these people like him, and I just said, hey, all those riffs you've been practicing all your life? Now's the time, dude. Let them fly. Let's go. And they would send me like 2 or 3 tracks, and I'm going, how do I choose from this, But it was really a lot of fun. So Ian Smith, clarinet, and then, on percussion, on Summertime Memory, it's a summertime song with some timbales, so I got this guy, Ronaldo Oconda from Venezuela, and he's a professor also in his own right down there, does so much. And then I said, what do you think? He said, what about some vibraphone in this song? And I went, yeah, okay, why not, And he's amazing. And so he was jamming, and I said, well, the guitar I was always playing on the 2. Why don't you play chords on the 1 and do some embellishments? And he said, yeah, great. And so he plays timbales and vibraphone on that tune. So that's Ronaldo. And that's just about it. Well, you know what? The first guy that I hired, and I can't say his name right now, he plays all these instruments. He's from Nashville. And I hired him to play dobro and steel guitar on a second version of I Come From Earth, which is coming out October 7th. It's called the Nashville Jam. And it's the same title tune, but with steel guitar and dobro. And that was the first track that I did. And that guy was amazing. Same thing. Sent me 2 tracks. It was hard to choose between. So let me see. Who else is left? Well, I got to mention Louis, the LP. The reason I'm in Las Vegas right now was I came here to finish mastering the album at a place called The Hideout. And Louis, the mastering engineer, Louis there, it's kind of an interesting story how I found that place, but I won't go into that right now, maybe for another time. And so he taught me a couple things about preparing the stuff for him to master. And I just let him master the whole album, and he is amazing. And so that's why I was here in Las Vegas, and we finished that. And I'm hanging around here deciding what to do next. But I had to mention Louis because he's such a big part of this whole process. And who else is left, Graham? Oh, okay. After I got all these people, the singers, the 8 singers and everyone, I was enjoying getting people so much, to participate in this, and they were adding so much to the music that I wanted to keep going. And so on the song, I Came From Earth, the title track, I was thinking, this whole album has sort of got this global theme now, and peace, love, and everything. And why don't I get some international backup singers to sing on this tune? Because one of the things about the song is it got a question and answer in it. Hey, where you come from? I come from Earth. And that was actually inspired. I've heard songs like that, but I remember a song by Warren Zevon called Surfer Girl, where he said, there's a certain girl I've been in love with a long, long time. What's her name? I can't tell you. Aw. And they would do that in the chorus, and it just made me laugh, the question and answer thing. So I thought, I'm going to get some. And now, so I ended up getting more than 20. I think there's 21 backup singers on that song, on I Come From Earth, on the Hey, Where You Come From, and then some other parts as well with Anna, and Cece Castro also sings the main backups on that one, as well as Anna V from Russia. And then there's 21 altogether backup singers, and they're from every continent except Antarctica, which is under international treaty and has no permanent residence. So we got somebody, and they've all knew what they're participating in. Some of them made statements about the project and everything. And it was just a lot of fun I met all of these serious musicians when I started searching. And I saw these people from around the world that are so passionate about their music. They're out there trying to connect with other musicians, and they're putting their each one of these 21 people have probably had projects. There's a few that were just sort of starting off, and I said, yeah, come on, and that was a lot of fun too, to get their reaction. But really serious musicians. Well, in this process, Jim, I met I lived in the Philippines for a while, off and on. So I had to get somebody from Philippines to represent. And I found this girl, Sharu, and she's from Philippines, to do backup. And then I had these lyrics for a song called Paro Butterfly. That means butterfly in Tagalog, in their language. They also speak English very well there. And I thought, well, why don't I see if she'll want to do a version of this in Tagalog? Because I had these English lyrics. And we ended up going back and forth, and we had two versions of the song, Tagalog and English, and they had the exact same melodies from our back and forth collaborations. It's kind of a long story, but same melodies, two languages. And I met Sharu through that, finding those backup singers. And then the other person I met, the final one, really to talk about the people, is a synth player, Lola Vicentini, who's from Argentina. I met her to sing backup, and I saw a picture of her in a room with 50 synthesizers. I counted them, bro. Wow. 50 synthesizers.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and I said, and I love synthesizers, that's the main thing on the album. And I said, she's now playing some of the synth accents on I Come From Earth, and then she's on a couple of other tracks. She sings on a little ditty with me, and she plays synth on a song called The First Song. And so, but it was the last minute that I found her, and the whole thing was about finished. And however, her synth that she added is just really amazing. And so I met those last two through that process of finding backup singers, and that pretty much wraps up the roundup of the people. Jim, I'll just add one thing to this, though. A couple of my friends that have known me for my whole life and seen the process I've gone through in music and everything, they said, this is your album, man. This is your songs, and you arranged and you produced, and, you played all these instruments on and everything. And you're always pointing the finger to everybody else in the band and what a difference it made and everything. And okay, granted, but you know what? The bottom line with me, Jim, is that I just love writing songs, man. And I'm happy that I can put them out there. And if somebody likes one song, and now this title track has been getting a lot of traction in different places, not like gigantic, but there's this one chart, the indie music charts, where it debuted at number 29, and it had a hot red thing like flashing by it. It was the only one that had hot. And I looked at this column and said momentum, and everybody's momentum was like 10, 20, maybe a 30 and a 50. And ours was 350.
Wow.
And I said, what is this? Because I'm trying to still imagine somebody even listening to my tunes, but they're like my children, man. I don't know if anybody's ever mentioned this to you, but when you're a songwriter and you write a song, and to me, I'm saying a song that has some kind of real meaning to you, and then you finish it, and then you sit there and you listen to it like 20 times, bro. And sometimes you're just in tears. It's just an amazing experience to for me anyway, just writing songs and then finishing the songs. And now to share them and have somebody actually hear it, hard for me to even imagine after all this time.
Right. Well, let's talk about a couple of songs. This podcast is going to feature two of them from the album I Come From Earth, the title track, I Come From Earth, and Spinning Round the Sun, parts 1 and 2. What's the story behind those songs?
Well, the theme, of I Come From Earth is really kind of about no borders. And it came from life experience. Now, some songs, like you probably talk to people where a song happens in 5 minutes or less, and I have some of those. But this song developed over the course of a few years. And it was from real life experience. And what happened is, like it says in the song, there's two questions that are always the same when you first meet someone, no matter where you go. What's your name and where are you from? And so when people would ask me where I'm from, I would just say Earth. And I noticed, and it was I wasn't in the song at that point. I just noticed that people laughed all the time. Almost every time I said that, someone would laugh, except for, as it says in the bridge, that one girl had a restaurant. I said, Earth. She said, where is that? And so it came from a real life experience. And then there were inspirations from several places, as I mentioned, the question and answer thing. And there are a number of musical influences probably throughout that song, but it's just about, hey, we're all from Earth, you know, where are you from? And it's, you know, what country? And when I travel sometimes, when people use the word foreigner, sometimes I think, you know, foreigner, wait a minute, I'm not a foreigner, I'm your brother, man, I'm your cousin, you know, but anyway, so that's kind of the theme of that song. And it started coming together that summer, last summer at Larry's place. And yeah, so it was one of those songs that just took a long time to develop. And then when we added the backup singers and everything, and the bass from Nikita, and then the synth from Lola later. And then once you hear the Nashville jam, you know, and we may have some other versions come in that have some background music for videos that show all of the backup singers on the album. So that's that tune. I don't think there's, well, the people on that song, Nick, Lola, myself, Larry, and the 20 backup singers, Cece and Anna V, the main backups, but Cece Castro and Anna V, and then 20 backup singers plus. So that's the personnel on that. The other song, Spinning Around the Sun, the other song, Spinning Around the Sun, actually has 3 versions on the album. Part 1, Connected. Part 2, Loving the Sun. And Part 3, Solar Rays, which is an instrumental. That's the last song on the album. It's split up. But Part 1 and 2 are tied together. That's what we're going to hear today. And interesting story, I guess, behind that song was I told you Jan Hammer was a big influence of mine, right? So during COVID, this was before I went to Larry's last summer, I was learning this Ableton software. I was perfecting my knowledge of it. And I bought a new guitar synthesizer pickup for my guitar, a wireless pickup called the Fishman Triple Play. It's amazing. And I plugged it in, and I'm sitting. By the way, I recorded a great deal of this off-grid in a travel trailer studio home during COVID on solar power. So I'd say 80% of the recording and mixing on my end was done on solar power, out off-grid. In Arizona, mostly. Yeah, Arizona, Southern California a little bit. And so I'm off-grid. I'm all by myself out there, and I just plugged in this brand new guitar synthesizer thing, and I'm looking through the sounds, and there's one that says Jan's Hammer, like Jan Hammer, right? And I went, see what that sounds like. And then I was sitting there thinking, should I do one of my old songs? You know, I've been going through these songs, or should I do a new tune? And I'm sitting in the sun in my doorway in my chair with my guitar, headphones, sitting in the sun, dude, on solar power. And I just started playing these chords with the melody on them, just like you hear them. The rhythm on that song is that Jan's Hammer patch that I modified a little bit, but it just can't. That's one of the songs. In 5 minutes, I had the chords, melodies, and the words may have developed a little bit. The words are very simple. And, you know, that song is about spinning around the sun. It's really just about how we're all connected to the sun, man. I mean, do you realize the sun is traveling through space at about 500,000 miles per hour? Wow. And we're following it. We're following it in a spiral as the other planets are. And the gravity, and we're spinning around it every year. And the sun, as it says, you know, gives us light, and it's for everyone on this earth. And it gives life also. You know, all life, Nikola Tesla said, all life is sun energy, and we get it firsthand, secondhand, thirdhand, but it all comes from the sun. So light, life, and then in the third verse, it's maybe a stretch, love coming from the sun. But actually, the second part is called Loving the Sun. It's about sun worship in a way. And so doesn't have to be receiving, I guess, love all the time. So it's about connection to the sun. And it's very simple lyrics. Then the part two is a cinematic variation of the chords. I was just experimenting with doing something cinematic. And what's amazing about, these two parts, really, there's only 3 people on these particular songs. Myself playing almost everything, Larry the drummer, and Anna V from Russia on vocals. And this was actually the first tune I heard her demo. I fell in love with her voice. She can sing so many styles. But the first song, Spinning Around the Sun, and I gave her open book to do harmonies or whatever, and she listened to it, said, I'm just going to do your octaves because I don't think it needs more. But then in part two, I told her I was going to do a cinematic version, and she expressed that she liked doing cinematic vocals. And so I started putting it together, and that's another story about the structure of that song, the cinematic song. But when I sent it to her, she was sick. Her voice was not doing well, and she was in bed for about a week in Russia. And she said she just listened to that song all week long and was imagining all of these parts. And her vocals in that part two, so many, all the female vocals are her. And I'm sure you've heard the Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon album, and there's a song called The Great Gig in the Sky, and the famous Tori, what's her name? Can't think of it. Somebody Tori, that sang female vocals. She's famous for that. And I wouldn't want to compare anybody to that, but I'll tell you what Anna did on that part two with her vocal is amazing. And then, yeah, there are not many lyrics in the part two. There are some words that mean sun in different languages, sun, light, life, but it's a cinematic variation. And those are the 2 tracks that we're going to hear.
Cool. Now, how do you approach songwriting? What is your creative process like?
Well, have you ever had anybody talk about where ideas come from when you're speaking with them? Writers?
Yeah.
And you've probably heard people talk about how sometimes a song comes out of nowhere.
True.
And yeah, well, like I said, on Earth, that was a 3-year, process. And one song that I have that took 20 some years to get to where I was happy. But then it doesn't always happen that way. Like with the song Power, Power, Butterfly, I told you about this back and forth collaboration with Cheru, in 2 languages. But then, and I told you about Spinning Around the Sun, how I was sitting in the sun and just within 5-10 minutes, I had chords and melody. And that was even influenced by Jan Hammer a little bit, the chord structure. However, I'll give you one more example of a different way that happens sometimes. The song Summertime Memory that I was telling you about, the album was finished, and it's added a few songs since then because I was actually in Lake Havasu, Arizona, out off grid one evening, and I was thinking, this album's going to come out in the summer. We should do a summer song. And then this was one of those times, Jim. I sat down. I started hearing the song all of a sudden in my head. I grabbed my guitar, a piece of paper, and pencil or a pen, and I could hear this. I listened to the chord and I wrote it down, and I started writing words out, and I was in tears, and I could feel chills running through my whole body. And I was bawling like a baby, man, for like 5 minutes. And I don't know why, uncontrollably. And then this girl that sings this song, Alyssa, she was one of the people I'd heard her demo, and I loved her quirky voice, and I wanted to get her on the album, but I just never had the song for it. And man, when I was hearing that song in my head, it was her singing, and I knew this is her song. And in 5-10 minutes, that song was finished, and I was like, what just happened? And so sometimes, and I'll tell you something, man, I gave my life to music, dude. I sacrificed so many things I played on cruise ships for 5 years. I was in road bands for 10 years. I moved. I I followed music and I sacrificed so much for that. And now, I really consciously just gave my life to it. And it seems like during this project, some crazy things happen, and it's almost like it's out of my hands. I keep meeting these people, and it just grew. And so that summertime memory, that's just one example of the process not always the same. However, I will say that if there's a songwriter listening, one thing I just learned, you got to practice and study other songwriters, and read about them, and then just do it and keep practicing and writing songs. But one thing I'll pass on is that if you write a verse and a chorus, you can be pretty much on your way to be finished with the song, because the second verse can be written off of the first verse, and then the bridge, you can just sort of flip the chords around, and then you got an intro, maybe a lead, a breakdown, an ending, a variation, but mainly a verse and a chorus, and start with that chorus right away, whether it's the chords or the words, with or without the words, and then when you come back to it the first time, bam, people have heard it. And so for a songwriter, and that's just one method. And I'll tell you another thing. Working with other people is not always easy. And I've done it my whole life. I've been a band leader, and I have some great ways of working with people. But it's not always easy, but it can add so much. And so if you don't really have anything to say lyrically, for example, and you want to write songs, you can go on the internet and find so many people that are passionate about writing lyrics, melodies, top line, they call it, melodies, and they'll do it for a fee if you want. And then you can have a song that has some meaning to it, or write an instrumental, man. If you got nothing to say, but I'm the best rapper in the club with my money and my women. Everybody's the best rapper. So, if you don't have anything to say, my advice is get someone who can write some cool lyrics, man. Mm-hmm. Say something that, realize that children might be listening when you are playing your song, and they can be influenced by you. They look up to you. And so if you're going to say something, if you're going to say words, remember, kids are listening, man. Come on. Have some intelligence, That's my advice to songwriters. And so I kind of went sideways on the way to write songs, but I'm into lyrics a lot. So, lyrics, practice, study people. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, besides writing music, you're an author as well. Can you talk about your book, Balance Your Choices, Life's Compact Book for Happiness Your Way?
Yeah, sure. That started a hobby actually when I was young. Somebody taught me about priorities. And then very simply, I started just thinking, well, instead of one big giant priorities list, what if I look at different areas of life and sort of, have maybe some of them you have priorities, some you don't, or they change, throughout time. And you have these times when you're really focused on one thing, like an album for a while, and you're not balanced, but then you have to go back to being balanced. So, I deal with it just like everybody else, and it's just been a hobby. Mm-hmm. But I have found, though, that by following priorities, because we get so many ideas throughout our life for things we'd like to do, and then some of them keep coming back, and by choosing priorities, that can get you to the next step and to find, everybody wants the same thing, basically, to find happiness, or I'll even say contentment, because it doesn't have to be jumping around happy. And so I think we all want that, to be happy and content in our life. And it's just choices, and there's making wise choices. And then besides planning, which can take over your life if you're not careful, because it's also simplifying is a little part of it that I speak about in there. Mm-hmm. But, besides that, it's also just enjoying each day along the way and learning how to do that. And in fact, my new book is about 100 pages. The first 40 pages are the whole meat of the book. I condensed it down so you can read it actually in an hour.
Okay.
The second part of the book is just various subjects. It's sort of a reference part of the book. So it's only 100 pages, really simple to look at. And I know it's not for everybody, but for people, especially young people who are trying to decide what to do with their life, or somebody who's gone through a change and wants an empty nest syndrome and is thinking what to do with their time.
Right.
You know, it's a way to just sort of look at what do you want to do with your life. And that brings me to, you know, there's a little ditty in the first song suite called Balance Your Choices. It's 35 seconds long. Mm-hmm. And that came from when I was writing the book. And then another thing that was influenced by the book, there's a chapter in there, briefly, it's called Enjoy Life. And I was in Machu Picchu, well, that's in Peru. I was on the Inca Trail. And this happened, we were out on the Inca Trail. It was amazing when 9/11 happened in 2001. Mm-hmm. And I was camping far away from civilization. And I was asking all these people on the trail, we were in a group of 20 people hiking for 4 days and to Machu Picchu from Cusco. And I was asking all these people on this like search, like, tell me what you've learned in life. And I got all these great answers and different perspectives. And there was this one old guy, they were from Australia, this couple, and he was reluctant to answer. He was sort of like, participating in this, you know. And then when 9/11 happened, we were all trapped. Well, there were no flights going out. The airports were closed. And I happened to run into these two guys in the square in Cusco sitting on a park bench, and we chatted for a while, him and his wife. And as we were leaving, he had been thinking about this question. I asked him about life, you know, and he looked me in the eyes and he said, enjoy life. That was his summary, you know, and I wrote a chapter about that. And I mentioned that in the song called Beyond, about the best advice that I ever received was from an old man when he looked at me and said, enjoy life when you come from Earth. And so that comes from the book. And that's just sort of, I guess that's what I'm saying is the book is about enjoying life as well as deciding what you want to do and making choices. So there you go. And yeah, so that's always been a hobby of mine, really, just for personal reasons. And then someone talked me into writing about it. And I wrote that last book between road trips, never promoted it. And finally now just stuck it out there on our website, cut the price down as low as Amazon would let me. And anyway, yeah, that's the book.
Yeah, it's available on Amazon.com. I believe it's for a paperback. It's only like $5 or something like that.
Yeah, there's a paperback for $4.99, and then there's a electronic version for 99 cents. That's the lowest they let me sell it. And they even now, it used to have a Kindle reader. Now there's Kindle apps you can just read it on.
Wow. Now, will there be another book?
Not necessarily. You know, no. I'm really enjoying music right now. Mm-hmm. Someday I might write about meditation. It's kind of been a personal hobby of mine for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I might do some videos about it, but right now music is really keeping me busy.
You know, it would be cool if you did a meditation book, but an audio book, because you have a great speaking voice. It's very soothing to listen to. So if you did an audio book, that would probably do well.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm actually Lola Vicentini, the synth player. She's really into it also, and she does meditation tracks and stuff, whether it's singing, talking, playing synthesizers. So we've been discussing doing some guided meditations just to sort of share what it's like in my personal experience. Because I believe there are many, many ways to meditate. Some people will say, no, you must do it this way exactly and go through this process and this and that. But I think that actually, yeah, it's a deep subject, I suppose, but I think there are a lot of ways to meditate, and I may share those someday. It's something that's kind of, that's the thing about priorities, you know. I love writing down ideas, Jim, and so when you write down ideas, sometimes you find that you have pages, hundreds, and then you have to choose what's first, and then do number one, and some of them you never get to, and you know, it's really easy to come up with ideas. It only takes about 1 second, but any of them could take over your life if you're not careful. Mm-hmm. You know, I think I'll start a record label, have a country album, a jazz album, a rock album, and a video channel and meditation videos and a new book and oh my God, and go to the gym and meditate and all the other things. So yeah, it's simplifying sometimes and prioritizing is what keeps me going. So, but I appreciate that. And I would like to share some meditation things with people. That would be great.
Yeah, I think so. Do you have a website you'd like to promote?
Sure. Actually, if people just remember the name Harmony Dreamers, it's everywhere now. The website is harmonydreamers.com. On YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and different places. And then, I forgot all the platforms, right? 250 platforms around the world, Spotify and iTunes and all. And what I've learned, Jim, I've been talking with people about where they listen to music, young people, all ages, and everyone sort of has their own platforms that are their favorite, right? And so it's everywhere, and just Harmony Dreamers. That's all you really have to know.
Very cool. Now, is there anything you'd like to mention that we didn't talk about today?
Well, let's see. Yeah, I think I mentioned that the Nashville Jam is coming out October 7th. I would like to mention something I ran across called Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. I can't recall who first said that, or there were several people throughout history. But this entire project of putting music on the internet, the way I see it, is that this internet music business, there are all these people responsible and making it possible for me to share music now. Inventors, software, hardware people, gear vendors, music lovers who are mentors, promoters. You mentioned MTS Management, Michael, who's such a godsend. And then people like Jim Hall, at the Record Machine Show, lovers of music, the whole thing, if it wasn't for all of those people, I wouldn't have been able to do this, So Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, I look at that as, wow, this music explosion on the internet right now, everywhere. And there's so many great artists and so much great music out there. It's amazing, and I mean, I don't know. I didn't expect anybody to even be able to find our stuff at first because so much great music is out there. And so one of the songs is another last minute tune. I'll segue into this. It's called The First Song. And it's about finally putting music on the internet. And it says, we need to make sure everything is working right, because that was recommended to me is, well, before you album, do a song or two so you make sure all the websites up and the artist pages and the promo social media and on and on. And so I dedicate that song, the first song, to all the business people and to any songwriters, music lovers out there, and just the internet music business in general. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So Standing on the Shoulders of Giants.
Makes sense. Well, Byron, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your stories and your music with us. I'm looking forward to seeing some more great stuff from you in the future. And anytime you have something you want to promote, you have my email, my cell number. Let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Jim, it's been a pleasure being on the Record Machine Show, an honor, I will say, and I would love to come back, and we're going to be seeing what other songs might catch on, what somebody might like out there. There are 12 songs on the album, one suite and a two-parter, so there's really 17 tunes on there. And if one person finds one song they love, man, that's going to mean a lot to me, and I'm looking forward to connecting with music lovers like yourself in the near future and getting out there.
Sounds good, brother. Well, like I said, let's stay in touch, and whenever you have something to promote and you want to come back on, let's set something up. All right?
Absolutely, man. This is my life right now, so I love talking about music, and I really enjoyed your show. I've listened to several episodes, and I'm going to tune in and check out some more of your stuff.
Sounds great, brother. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon, all right?
Okay. Thank you, Jim. My pleasure.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.